Hello everyone, welcome to From the Star Wars Library, where Star Wars is in print, the Force is with the readers, and we return to Kashyyyk for an introduction that we didn't realize at the time was as important as it was in this issue of the Marvel series. I'm your host, Nathan P. Butler. We're taking a look this time at issue number 91 of the Marvel series, entitled Wookiee World. Now, this is art by Tony Salmons, with the writing, of course, by Mary Jo Duffy, yet again, as is often the case in this era. You can find this these days in the pages of the first issue of Classic Star Wars a long time ago, the Prestige format series here in black and white. It's in there with The Long Hunt and The Apprentice, two of the different annuals, the first and the third. You can also find it more prominently these days in Star Wars Omnibus a long time ago, Volume 5. This is unknowingly the beginning of the Nagai arc, though we didn't realize what it was at the time. We saw Lando and Chewie and Han take off back in the Hero to go on that Kioran run, with part of the motive there being to try to give Chewbacca a chance to visit his family on Kashyyyk. They wound up running afoul of Drebel and everything. We saw that back in the Hero, and now they're finally on Kashyyyk. Lando has arrived in the Cobra, and Han and Chewbacca in the Millennium Falcon. And they try to visit his family, only to wind up finding that his family isn't there, except for another Wookiee named Vargi, or Vargi, who is Malatabuk, Chewie's wife's brother. Almost said husband. Brother. That'd be kind of creepy, wouldn't it? But not something that would be necessarily unheard of in Star Wars. Dysfunction everywhere. They meet an unusual man, an unusually pale unusual man, there with Vargi, named Knife. Or at least that's the nickname that he was given by the Wookiees, named Knife. We later find out in the University of Sambra Guide to Intelligent Life, the Marvel series, back in Star Wars Gamer's first issue, when we actually started to see some Marvel stuff worked back into the modern continuity, that his name is actually not Knife. It is, and I gotta look at this, Ozrai or Ozrai Natakulomandrife. Yeah, no wonder we just call him Knife. Now, without realizing it, we are being introduced here to the Nagai. What we get here is a quick little exchange between Lando and Han, in which Han basically says that he has no idea what to make of Knife because he's flown from one side of this galaxy to the other and never seen anyone who looks like the same species that Knife is. I mean, really, the way that Knife is drawn here, he kind of looks like a really, really pale, instead of green, child of Frankenstein or something, as far as the head shape goes and everything. We wind up meeting Lumpy, right, from the holiday special. Ha! He's back from the holiday special. Again. Only for it to wind up being that this is all essentially a trap, and Knife is recreating or reactivating the slave trade on Kashyyyk. A slave trade in Wookiees that goes all the way back to the Empire. But, just like we had the issue back in Figurehead, where it seemed as though the Empire was back in practice with the slave trade whenever Leia encountered it on Herdessa and encountered Lumaya as part of that whole operation. We thought it was the Empire building up. Well, we have a conversation here between Knife and our heroes in which Han says, "Isn't it obvious, Lando? Business as usual." To which Knife replies, "You're more perceptive than I gave you credit for, Solo. You are quite correct. The Kashyyyk, spelled wrong, slave trade is about to be reactivated." To which Han replies, "Well, we suspected there might be areas like this, that there might be a stronger Imperial machine than we suspected still in power in some quadrants." To which Knife replies, rather tellingly, "The Empire? Do you truly believe I represent that pathetic little outfit?" Which opens up this idea that, wait, maybe it's not the Empire unless Knife is lying here. Eventually we wind up seeing Chewbacca and Han captured along with the others by Knife, and Lando and Han are left behind. Chewie is going to be a slave with everyone else. Lando and Han manage to free themselves. Lando goes off to get his ship, the Cobra, whereas Han goes to try to free the Wookiees. He frees Chewbacca, only for Vargi, who of course is a collaborator working with Knife, to come in and start whooping up on Chewbacca. Only for Han to be the one to step in and kerthwap punch Vargi. Oh, that's going to leave a mark, and probably a grudge as well. Until finally, as the battle finally ends, Lando comes back, manages to, with Chewie's family, right, Itchy and Mala and Lumpy up there, and manages to blast the knife from Knife's hand as he's about to throw it to potentially kill Chewbacca by stabbing him in the back, until Chewbacca winds up knocking out Vargi, and in all the hooray, we won celebrations, Knife slips away, steals Lando's ship, the Cobra, and takes off for parts unknown. So the day is saved, right? Chewie's family is okay. Our heroes are okay. Kashyyyk is not dealing with the slave trade anymore, which is good. It could have gotten going again, but it's not. But who was Knife? Who was he working for? What species is he, and where did he go? All questions left to kind of make us think, this is probably mostly a throwaway story, little references here and there. It's actually the beginning of something bigger. Between this and Lumaya, we're building up toward the revelation of the Nagai, the Toffs, the war between them, the Nagai versus the Alliance, the Toffs versus the Alliance, and the return of Lumaya again in Nozeltron's and duel with the Dark Lady. Lots of stuff building up here, just like with David Michelinie and the whole She-Ra story back in his era. We have a slow building of concepts to eventually have it explode into bigger and better things. What I worry about looking back at the 80s was that maybe readers at this time didn't realize what was happening. I think back to when I started watching Babylon 5 the first time. The first season of Babylon 5 has a lot of breadcrumbs that eventually will build, a lot of threads being laid, that will eventually build to be tied into knots or be pulled into a knot, as Straczynski has said, to make the bigger points and bigger plot events in later seasons. You really need to see Season 1 to get what comes later, but when you're watching Season 1, you don't quite realize that these things are going to be used again, because at the time, really wasn't done much in television like that, at least not sci-fi television. And I kind of feel like that's the same thing we see here. Little threads being laid, but maybe they should be a little bit more obvious that this really is building to something. Because I can imagine someone in the Marvel days back then kind of being like, and thinking of all these stories as somewhat throwaway until they finally do come together, which would have been a great revelation to see, and wow, amazing moment, but I would imagine a lot would probably have given up at this point, especially with no more Star Wars films coming in theaters anytime in the near future. They're probably thinking that, Star Wars is dying off. And with some of the stories that we got a little while ago, like I'll See You in the Throne Room, you can make the argument that perhaps it was. But thanks to stories like this, it is continuing to grow in the post-Return of the Jedi era, and it's heading toward a destination we just didn't really know was coming back then. So, this begs the question, is this story, Wookiee World, an essential read? I think yes. Introducing the Nagai, pushing the idea that this is not the Empire that's doing this, or at least not entirely the Empire that is doing this. I think those are important plot points, at least for Marvel readers. I don't think it's essential for modern readers, but for Marvel readers, you should definitely check this one out if you're in the process of reading the post-Return of the Jedi stuff, because it is leading to bigger and better things, as I've mentioned. With that, we'll wrap up this episode. Thank you for watching, and may the Force be with the readers.